Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bernd Jaster. I'm working for DTCon International. I'm there in the information technology practice, and cloud computing is one of our current topics. We are doing projects with our customers. So the key takeaway for me from the morning session was that cloud computing is no future vision anymore. It's no abstract thing in the future. It's already being done. It's it's live, and it's a topic that is really being done by the companies sitting here. So from these practical experience, some challenges arise. Most of these challenges are related to operational topics, and therefore operation models are very key for the success of cloud computing. Today I'm going to talk about one of these new or adapted operating models for the cloud computing age, which we call lean service providing. So in the beginning we just had the cloud. It was basically the as-a-service paradigm. We had infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. It was quite abstract. Now what we see is there are a lot of offerings on the market, a lot of services you can book and you can use as a customer. If you now look at the market, you see the cloud market is splitting up into a software universe on the one hand, and an infrastructure utility on the other hand. The software universe is characterized by differentiation. You have to do integration, you have to do orchestration, because there are a lot of different and often very specialized applications for the customers. So you also have a very diverse vendor situation with one-man companies up to the big players. This is the software universe. The infrastructure utility works a little bit different. Industrialization is very important for infrastructure. Automation is a main characteristics of this market. And in the end, it's about prices. You want to get economies of scale in order to attract your customers. If you now stay at this infrastructure utility, you have your classical situation today. So before cloud computing, before going to the cloud, you have your integrated IT provider or outsourcing provider. This IT provider has a vertically integrated value creation. So this means from data center facilities to the operations up to the account management, all is done by this IT provider, integrated. What we see now is this integration is breaking up, and three major unbundled business models are developing. You have your assets company that is focusing on infrastructure, networks, maintenance, that kind of stuff. Then you have your service company doing all the value-added services and aggregation. And on top, you have your sales company focusing on the wholesale or retail channels to the customer. This might sound a little bit abstract. It's also quite new for the IT market, but if you look at other markets, for example, the telco market or also the energy market, this is also already happening for a long time. So you have your network companies, for example, in the telco business, your service companies on top, and then you have your MVNOs, your virtual network operators that are poorly doing sales and not are independent from any hardware or infrastructure below. But the good news is this is not only happening in the energy or telco market, also in the cloud market. This is already being done. So you have players, you have companies with offerings out there in the market in all of these business models. You have a USource IT, for example, that is something like a cloud broker. You have your integration providers like a Scalar or RightScale at the service level. And for infrastructure, of course, you have the big ones like Amazon or GoGrid or Rackspace. So if you now go to the IT user, of course, wants to use the on-demand model. He wants to use pay-as-you-go. He wants to be flexible, so all the advantages are coming with cloud computing. But there are also some challenges he has to deal with. If you look at the classical situation, once again, at the hosting scenario, you have a hosting provider offering more or less the complete IT production depth, which means from the data center, the configuration surveillance, up to the operations support, the full range of depth is done by one provider, by your hosting provider. If you now want to move to the cloud, this changes a little bit. The first thing you notice, you have not only one, you can have multiple providers, infrastructure providers in this case, yeah, they have different production depths, but they are not reaching the level as the hosting provider did. So you have a gap, and this gap has to be filled in by something or someone. Yeah, that's the place where the lean service provider, the new concept of the lean service provider steps in. The lean service provider, the main feature of this lean service provider is it operates on a third-party infrastructure. It does the operation not on own infrastructure as the hosting provider did, but on third-party infrastructure. It also can support multiple EIS cloud providers, which means you have the enabler for a multi-sourcing strategy. And it does this in a highly automated manner in order to gain all the efficiency benefits you want to have with cloud computing. Yeah, if you ask now, how can I do such a lean service providing, there are two principal ways in doing this. You can do it either externally, which means you source these lean services from the market. For example, from small application providers, from hosting providers, or from completely new market entrants that are focusing purely on these lean services. If you are doing this, you can keep the existing demand-supply split, which means you don't change the interfaces. It's as you were used to from the hosting scenario. You can also benefit from the know-how and the skills from this external partner, and perhaps there are also better economies of scale in doing this. The other way is doing it internally. Internally means you empower your own IT department to operate not only the own infrastructure, but also third-party infrastructure. This is also a big chance to go to service delivery, so not only the operation and maintenance and operate the hardware infrastructure and these things, but to deliver services, which is quite important to get going on with your IT department. You can therefore increase your flexibility, you have less complex contracts to deal with, and yeah, you do your IT operations internally, but you don't have any CapEx, just OpEx. That's one big advantage of this model. Now, if you ask how can this be done in a practical situation, I brought you a small case study from a project as we did it with our customer, and yeah, we just started analyzing use cases, customer-specific use cases, how to use or how to even offer cloud services. These use cases were then evaluated according to different dimensions. For example, the quantitative or the qualitative benefit, the time frame in which this use case could be realized, and then in the final step, one use case from the set of use cases was selected to begin with. This customer selected non-productive infrastructure to begin with, so no productive systems, just test and development systems for the start. For this use case was then a strategy developed. The strategy compared a vendor assessment, requirements analysis, but also, and this is most important or was most important for this customer, a cost case. So to look at the cost baseline and calculate what could be saved going into the cloud with these specific machines. But not only the cost, but also the operation is very important. So you do have changes going in the cloud. You do have to adapt your workflows, your processes, and all these things were done in an operational concept. So workflows, processes are very important, but in the end, if you want to get the savings, if you want to get the efficiency benefits, you also have to look at the implementation. And the implementation in this case was based on two main components, a workflow tool and an abstraction layer. So the workflow tool, it was connected to all the users and also the lean service provider. And yeah, it was possible to fully automate the workflows. Then there was an abstraction layer. This abstraction layer more or less translated the universal requests from the workflow tool in the individual ones from the cloud providers. So this was the enabler for the multi-provider sourcing strategy, which the customer demanded in this case. So just a quick summary of my presentation. The cloud computing market is splitting up into two sub-markets, infrastructure utility and the software universe. This infrastructure utility is highly standardized and automated. There's a gap in the production depth, so this has to be filled in. For example, it can be done with a lean service provider concept. This lean service provider could be realized either internally with your own IT department or externally from the market. And what we showed with customer cost cases is you could save costs, you have cost-saving potentials, mainly due to automation and multi-provider sourcing strategies. Thank you, and yeah.